The world is facing a problem that seriously impacts the photo and video communities. We can't trust images anymore. But we're also facing a big problem of people saying that real images are fake. And it's causing people to lose photo contests, but it also has the potential to change presidential elections. We know we don't trust mass media anymore, but increasingly we don't even trust each other. When you see your friend's Facebook photos, you definitely question whether it was photoshopped or AI generated in some way. And increasingly, scammers are reaching out and impersonating family members with photos, voice, video. I'm going to leverage my cybersecurity background and propose a solution that I believe is workable. But first, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is a platform you can use to create your own website with your own custom domain, your own email addresses, your own store. You can take appointments from clients. The most important thing here is you're not going to be reliant on social media anymore. You will have your own presence that nobody can inject ads into, that nobody can impersonate. Try it out for free at squarespace.com/Tony. You'll see it's really easy to set up and have your own authentic web presence. And if you decide to pay for the full service, the coupon code Tony will get you 10% off. Thank you, Squarespace. We acknowledge fake images are a problem right now. Think back to the Pope in a puffy white jacket. That was really the first AI image that tricked people because it spread like wildfire. But that continues today. We have presidential candidates sharing AI-generated images right alongside real, authentic images. Increasingly, we see innocent people scammed by romance scammers, where some person, could be even in a foreign country, generates fake images of a person that would appeal to you and writes a script, often AI-generated, to make you fall in love with them and maybe send them money. But this is going to get worse and worse because soon we're going to be seeing FaceTime family scammers. You'll get a call from an odd number and you'll pick it up and it will be your son, your grandson, your nephew on a FaceTime video. It will be them. It will be their face, their voice, and they will say they need money. And there will be no reasonable way for you to know the difference because it will be entirely possible for somebody to take somebody's public photos and video from a Facebook profile, perfectly copy their voice and image and use it to manipulate you. Today we have two different solutions being implemented, but I think they both fall short. The bigger plan is the content authenticity initiative. Right now that's really focusing on major camera manufacturers creating cameras that can sign digital images, and then those signed images can be validated within a mass media organization. So a photographer for Reuters or CNN could take a picture and his editor would be able to make sure that that wasn't like intercepted along the way. That's good, but I don't think it goes far enough. Social media companies like Instagram are now starting to label images as AI if they know that they're AI, but really the only way that they know something is AI is if somebody edited it with Photoshop or Lightroom and used generative AI within the image and that metadata stayed intact. The problem with this is it's completely ineffective for bad actors. If you're trying to scam somebody, that metadata can be completely stripped out. It will also label images that are generated with AI, but not something that's completely comped together in Photoshop. Like I wrote a Photoshop book, I can comp together a very good photo without the need for AI at all. Also, the label is being overused. You can go in and just remove a spot of dust from an image. If that uses generative AI, then your entire image will be labeled as made with AI. People see real images labeled as made with AI, they're going to start dismissing the made with AI label. Some generative AI image companies will watermark it or add metadata to the image. Both of those can be easily removed. And as long as there's one method for generating AI images that doesn't add a watermark or metadata, the bad actors will just choose that one alternative. And I promise there's always going to be more than one good alternative. People are also making AI systems that detect AI images, but that's never going to work long term. If you can create a system that detects flaws in AI images, then you could use that same system to train the AI image generator to defeat it, right? Forget trying to label AI images. I don't think that's a battle that can be won. Instead, I think we need a system that validates a real image has not been significantly modified since it was taken with your camera, your smartphone, whatever. This will be something civilians like you and I can use. If you instant message somebody a picture and it's a real picture, there'll be a little green checkbox. If you're scrolling through somebody's Facebook page and they put real vacation photos up, there'll be little green checkboxes. You'll be able to click that and see how that image was validated as real to get more information and perhaps give you more confidence about its authenticity. Images that don't have that will be labeled with the question mark, and images that are known to be AI will be labeled with a red warning sign. Let me tell you a little bit about how it works. It centers around a new hardware chip that I'm calling TIM, the Trusted Imaging Module. If you're a security geek like me, and you're thinking that sounds a lot like the Trusted Platform Module, TPM, it's a lot like that. I'm basing it on the same fundamental concepts, and that this is a very securely designed piece of hardware that if somebody tries to tamper with it, it breaks. This TIM is connected directly to the camera and GPS modules in a smartphone, a traditional camera, a video camera, whatever it is. The TIM chip internally provides basic security functions, like it stores private keys as part of a public key cryptography system that it will use to digitally sign images so that when somebody views it later, they can be cryptographically confident that the image was made on the camera that it was taken with. TIM will also be able to handle some basic edits so that those can be done securely. You should be able to adjust the exposure and do some cropping and fix the white balance on an image without it necessarily being called inauthentic. On a camera or smartphone equipped with TIM, here's what will happen when you take a picture. The raw data from the camera will go directly into the TIM in such a way that it can't be easily impersonated. The camera will send along lots of useful information for validating that the scene is what it is, like the focusing distance of the lens. Of course, it'll send along the standard metadata, like the focal length and the time of day, but it will also add things like the last GPS location and time. We can provide even more reassurance about the authenticity of an image by including a few other things. In the case of smartphones that have multiple lenses, we could include the data from one of the other lenses that's going to be at a slightly different perspective. And thus, if somebody were taking a picture of a two-dimensional image and trying to pass it off like they were at the scene, the angle from the alternate lens would show that that scene was two-dimensional. You could also show the same thing by including the LiDAR depth info. That's like little laser beams that fire out from your camera, and it uses to map the scene to find where it needs to focus the lenses on, and that hardware is pretty much already included in a lot of smartphones. Today, in live photos, if you press and hold them in an instant message, it will play little video clips before and after the image. That's much harder to fake than a single still image because video takes a lot more computing power. Thus, including little before and after clips will help to validate that images are real. Real images are great, but I still need to be able to edit. I shoot to edit myself. I will sometimes underexpose things and then adjust it in post. I often shoot to crop, and to send off an uncropped picture would significantly reduce the beauty of the image. Of course, I need to accommodate editing here, and I believe we can accommodate some types of edits and still be secure. I see two different ways to do this. You could either edit images inside TIM on the same device that you captured it with, or you could edit images later. If you're editing images inside TIM, I'd like to send the image back to TIM. It would be able to verify that it was signed with the same private keys and apply edits and then re-sign it and re-export it so that the image and metadata indicating the types of edits that were made can be verified as authentic. If you want to edit an image outside of Photoshop, that shouldn't remove your ability to show some amount of authenticity. I believe the right way to do this is not to change the original image, but instead to add a list of edits to the metadata. So if you want to crop it, add that cropping information to the metadata. If you want to change the exposure, add that to the metadata. The viewing app, which could be Instagram or the Photos app on your phone, they will apply the edits and display it to you so that the original image does not get modified, but the viewer still sees the edited photo. Of course, this plan involves adding a whole bunch of context to our existing photos so that people can validate that those photos are real photos. But we don't always want that extra context. So when you do share images, users should be given the option to strip out that data, and things like GPS location should probably be removed by default so that people aren't doxing themselves. The magic happens when somebody opens iMessage or FaceTime or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok to actually view the still images or video. First, the client needs to receive the image, but then it should be able to look at the signature in there and validate that it was taken with an authentic device. Not necessarily tracing it back to the original photographer, but that it was taken with, say, an iPhone 17 Pro Max, something in the future that had not been modified. Of course, the possibility exists that these private keys could be leaked or hacked. To address that vulnerability, we need the Certificate Revocation List, or the CRL. My vision of this very closely models the existing system that we use for SSL certificates and websites. Today, when you visit just about any website, there's a little lock next to the name. It wasn't always that way. 20 years ago, before SSL was widespread, if you were to browse the web, it was actually very easy to get tricked into visiting the wrong site. In other words, a system like this exists, albeit at a smaller scale, because this is going to be really big scale. My plan would involve just about every new smartphone and camera having this additional information, these private signatures, and the ability to revoke any of those. So that requires working on a bigger scale than we currently are with the SSL system and websites. The viewing app would look at the metadata and see if any edits needed to be applied before viewing it, and then it would validate the verification and actually display to the user a verification, something like a green check mark, something that could not be embedded in the photo or video, something that could not be easily impersonated. On social media sites like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, I imagine this validation would happen at the server side, and thus there'd be no extra load placed on the client side. The client here, your phone, would just get a regular image and a little notation in the app that that image was authentic. But we also need peer-to-peer client-side validation, because we do need this when people are sending instant messages with picture or FaceTiming people who could be their friends or they could be a scammer. And thus we would need the ability to verify images and video built into our smartphone devices. Some of you are watching this and thinking, but wait, Tony, that's not going to work because you're my favorite people. And I want to give you the opportunity to speak in the comments down below. Feel free to write why this won't work, because that sort of information will help us design a better system. But I do want to address some of the vulnerabilities and provide countermeasures for them. But I want to teach everybody that security doesn't need to be absolute. Like, the doors to your home probably have locks. Your windows probably have locks, but that doesn't stop somebody from throwing a brick through it, right? No, but it means if they want to get into your house, they're going to have to make a bit of noise as they break the window. There's a bit more of a commitment from the person who would break in if they have to smash a window as opposed to just opening the front door. And that's why locks on your doors and windows are effective. They're not absolutely effective. It's really, really straightforward to break into somebody's house if you want to, but more secure is more gooder. When we talk about the problem of AI images, the reason people are scared more now than they were in the last 30 years when we've been compositing images in Photoshop, they're scared now because AI images are so accessible, because you don't need to read a Photoshop book to generate a completely fake image. Literally anybody can do it, and thus the billions of people around the world are all suddenly potential bad actors, even if they wouldn't have access to Photoshop training and software. Given Tim and this authentic image infrastructure, the average person wouldn't be able to fake images. It would take significant resources and work and time, and thus that's going to reduce the flood of images. Okay, the first obvious vulnerability is that somebody could take a picture of a picture. In other words, you could use AI to generate an image and then take a picture of it with your smartphone, and the smartphone would think that that image was authentic. That's the reason I included GPS information. If you're generating a fake picture of a presidential rally and you take a picture of your computer screen and try to pass that off, the GPS location should show you at the presidential rally, but you probably wouldn't be there, or the time wouldn't be right. Still, if you had the resources, you could generate a fake AI image of the rally, bring your screen to the rally itself, and take a picture of it, and then the GPS location and time would work, but far fewer people would be able to travel to the rally in order to do that, and thus the number of potential bad actors has been dramatically reduced. But we can address it further still by analyzing the focusing distance of the lens. Well, taking a picture of a screen is going to be at a different focusing distance, including context from the additional lenses on a smartphone, provides a bit of a perspective shift that should validate whether a scene is two-dimensional or three-dimensional, as would including the LiDAR map from cameras that include the LiDAR. What we're doing here is we're creating a bunch of hoops for potential bad actors to leap over, and we're giving people multiple ways to validate truly authentic images. Another potential vulnerability here is that the TIM needs to be securely connected to the camera in such a way that the camera signal can't be faked, right? Because there's a little TIM connected to the camera. You could desolder the camera, put in your own fake image camera that's feeding in fake data, and then trick the TIM into signing that. Well, this requires hardware design that makes it tamper-proof, not unlike the current implementation of TPM chips that we have in modern computers. If somebody were to try to remove the camera, it would have to break the entire system in such a way that it could not be easily repaired. Ideally, the GPS signal would also be secure. Of course, this whole thing revolves around confidence in public key cryptography, a system I'm not going to try to get into right now, but it does allow secure digital signatures. The weakness is if somebody gets your private key, the thing that should be stored inside your TIM here, if that leaks out, even from one device, then that one digital signature could be used to generate thousands or millions of fake images that looked to be real. To address that, you need to be able to detect those leaks and then revoke those licenses. Public key cryptography systems like the SSL thing that puts the locks on your URLs, they do that with a certificate revocation list, and this system would obviously need a very massive and regularly updated certificate revocation list. Once a key leaks, it can be misused until that leak is detected, the certificate revocation list is updated and distributed. So there is a window where a leaked key would generate unreliable false images, but it wouldn't be an indefinite window. And hopefully, I'd love to see social media sites implement a system where if somebody did see an inauthentic image that was labeled as authentic, it would let them know. It'd be like, hey, remember this image? We told you it was authentic. It actually wasn't. Turns out the CRL got published and that was fake the whole time. I've suggested using GPS location tags in public places, like in newsworthy scenarios, as part of the way that we validate the authenticity of an image. Today, GPS is not a perfect system. Like GPS can be spoofed by extremely knowledgeable people. There are some countermeasures to that. Like if you're going to spoof an iPhone, the iPhone could be constantly monitoring its own GPS signal. And if you suddenly teleported from Tehran over to Washington, D.C., then it could say, hey, there's an inconsistency here that doesn't align with the rules of physics, and thus I think this GPS signal might be spoofed. Things like the iPhone can also get GPS signals from multiple different GPS systems, so it could convey the level of confidence that it has in its own location as part of that metadata. Long term, civilians need a secure GPS system. The military has it today because they don't want their GPS signals to be spoofed, right? We just don't have access to it. But this is already underway. This is under development. Of course, hacking will continue to be a major vulnerability. If you can hack somebody's phone, then you can make it show an image is authentic when it's not authentic. Same thing can happen on the server side. If you manage to hack Facebook, then you could override their verification system. Of course, there's general app security. I feel like devices nowadays are pretty secure. There's lots of little walled gardens and protections for all sorts of things, and generally it's working pretty well. It's also a constant cat and mouse game. People find new vulnerabilities all the time. The software developers roll out fixes. That same system would need to be in place for this. Of course, the oldest photo hack in the world is just staging photos. People have done this from the beginning of time, pretending there were little fairies in a garden. Of course, you'll still be able to stage photos, but that's harder to do than simply generating an AI image. But even staged photos will be more difficult to make believable with this new scenario in place. Like, take the Swifties for Trump AI image. You'd be able to hire models and then have them go to a Taylor Swift concert or a rally of some kind and take a picture of it, and that picture would be real. But now you've had to hire people, pay some money out of pocket, and you have the problem of collusion, right? Collusion is difficult in crime because one person, pretty easy to keep a secret, but if you were to hire 3 people to wear Swifties for Trump t-shirts, You would only need one of those three people to say, hey, we were paid to do that. That's totally fake. In which case, we would have to have systems in place to update people and let them know that that particular image was a staged image. Here's how I think the rollout will go. We'll have the Content Authenticity Initiative, which is very good. It will allow news agencies to validate their own images, but that's going to be slow because they're mostly using traditional cameras, and traditional camera manufacturers, they're not the best at these sorts of things. But with that said, there are a few cameras that currently support it. But I have almost every camera, and I've never taken a CAI validated image. Even then, the authenticity won't go to the end users consuming the image. It's going to be authentic within CNN or Reuters or Fox News. And then when they share it, they'll just have to say, trust us, bro, we validated it, right? That's not perfect. I think the civilian rollout of this should start with Apple. They have a unique role of a near monopoly in the smartphone market, especially here in the United States. They should implement a version of TIM with the Apple iPhone cameras. And they should link it to iMessage, FaceTime, and the Apple Photos app. You see, Apple has the ability to do everything, the hardware part, the software part, and create an end-to-end system as part of a future camera rollout. Once that's rolled out, they can get social media to begin to support that. So we can get that green checkbox in Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. And look, Apple's not my favorite. They love closed systems, as shown by the recent lawsuits that required them to use USB-C and open up some of iMessage's capabilities. And I don't want this to be closed. They need to work with Android and Canon and Sony and Nikon and everybody to create an open system that we can all use for the betterment of society. And if being a good person isn't sufficient motivation for them, then perhaps we'll need a government mandate. Let me think about it. We'll probably need a government mandate. We live in a capitalistic society. Any change needs to be driven by profit, right? We have to find funding for this, and companies are not going to waste their valuable resources on something that doesn't make them money. That's just real world. But I do think this can be a significant feature in new smartphones at first that will drive people. Because I think when people are scrolling through their social media feed and some of their favorite TikTokers have the green checkbox and some don't, they'll start to think, those people without that green checkbox, I don't know what they actually look like. That could be an AI avatar. People want to connect to real people. Authentic, lo-fi images and video are in fashion right now. People are using disposable film cameras, Polaroid, instant cameras, 8mm film, because we want to connect to something real. We are sick of fake but perfect images. So I think people will jump on this idea of getting themselves validated as being a real person. And once they do, well, they're going to need to buy a new phone, right? Because this requires some security hardware in it that your existing phone doesn't. And smartphone manufacturers have been struggling to increase the adoption of each new phone. They need more compelling features, and I think this is a perfect one. Thanks for watching my TED Talk. Not really, but in the comments down below, tell me what you think of this. Do you want it? Would you be willing to upgrade your device if you could get that green checkbox? And those of you with the engineering minds who are already coming up with all the ways that this is going to break, go ahead, tell me why it can't work, but also think about what you can do to overcome the limitations that you just came up with. And don't forget to support our sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace makes beautiful websites incredibly easy. Start at squarespace.com/Tony. Create your photography portfolio, your video reel, or a website for personal projects, businesses. Squarespace supports all of those. Set up a store, take appointments from clients, choose from many different gorgeous templates, and then customize them, because this is for you. This is not social media where we're all forced to look the same and we get ads injected in it. Start at squarespace.com/Tony. Try it out. No credit card required, just a free trial. And when you love it, the coupon code Tony will save you 10%. Thanks, Squarespace. Bye.